everybody, if you're new here, my name is Lo and I'm obsessed with vintage fashion. Today's video is going to be a part 2 to last week's video in a series called Where Do I Shop? Which is essentially a series where I help other people who are interested in vintage fashion find different retailers and boutiques online where they can purchase retro style fashion. In my video last week, I started by covering some of the industry giants out there, including Collective, Modcloth, and Unique Vintage. In that video, I didn't touch on all of the vintage reproduction retailers that I wanted to, so again, everything in this video is just similar energy to the brands that I covered in last week's video. If you haven't seen my video from last week, I would highly recommend checking that out first, so that way you know some of the criteria that I'm using to assess these brands. All of today's shops are also vintage reproduction brands, which again means that clothing is produced from vintage styles and patterns, but modern fabric is used to make them. Today, we'll be discussing Pinup Girl Clothing, Band Retro, Vivien of Holloway, and British Retro. As a general disclaimer, I actually do not own any clothing from any of these brands, so all of this information is just based on research that I've done on the brand's websites and other places online. I'm just compiling all of this available information so that you as viewers can do what you may with it. And again, none of this content is sponsored, though I wish that it was. So all of these opinions are actually my own and based on research. Let's begin with Pinup Girl Clothing. Pinup Girl Clothing is a Los Angeles-based vintage reproduction company started and owned by a woman named Laura Burns. Burns is very passionate about dressmaking and vintage style, as well as body inclusivity and representation. Pinup Girl Clothing also hosts 2 Facebook groups for lovers of vintage fashion to form a community with one another. Pinup Girl Clothing's average price point is on the higher end. Dresses tend to be in the $160 to $190 range, with more formal gowns tending to be around $200 to $220. Tops range from $60 to $100 and bottoms range from $60 to $150. Big range there, it just kind of depends on what you're going for. They also sell lingerie for $40 to $60, shoes from $40 to $70, and jewelry from $15 to $40. They also have purses for $35 to $70. As far as their ethics and sustainability goes, they do not have a statement on their website. However, it seems that most, if not all, of their clothing is designed and sewn in Los Angeles, which I imagine means that everything's being created under the local labor laws there. I'm also not certain of all of the materials that are used in clothing production. It's not really easy to find on the website, but I did see some things like shoes and handbags being listed as made with vegan leather, which we know vegan leather is polyester. There are also some items made with real leather and real wool. So if not using animal products is important to you, that might not be for you. But if you really like having like real wool or leather or organic materials like that in your clothing, that could be for you. For their sizing, like I said earlier, Pinup Girl Clothing is dedicated to body inclusivity and representation. All of their clothing is carried in sizes extra small to 4X, which in US dress sizing is 2 to 24. In addition to these sizes, the plus sizes are not just given like a separate listing. Like it's not like, oh, like sizes XS through large or here, and then extra large to like 4X is like a different link, like a lot of websites do. It's all just on one listing, and they use a variety of different models. They regularly use a diverse group of models, so it's not just like, oh, here's a skinny person modeling every single dress, but we offer it in up to 4X. You actually get to see models that have your body type, whatever that might be. Pinup Girl Clothing has like a really elegant look, and they're definitely a company that I would love to buy from in the future. They're just a little bit out of my price point right now, but maybe if they have like a holiday collection, I would splurge on like one item around Christmas time. The next company that I want to talk about is Band Retro. Band Retro is a vintage reproduction clothing brand that's based in the UK. And they also run a sister site called Band Alt, which sells more like alternative, punk, goth clothing. Probably one of their most popular items that Band Retro sells are their Lifeforms petticoats, which are these like super fluffy, super voluminous, I believe soft chiffon style petticoats. I'm personally kind of lusting over them, and I'll probably be investing in one or two soon, so I can do like a petticoat review from them if that's something that you guys would be interested in. Each of their petticoats is 40 Great British Pounds, which is about $55 US. That brings me to pricing. I would consider Band Retro to be in the mid-price range. I would say honestly they're pretty comparable to modern clothing brand pricing like H&M. It's very H&M price level. Their dresses typically range from $55 to $77. Their tops range from $30 to $53. Their skirts range from $45 to $57, and their pants go as low as $18 up to $64. In addition to their clothing, they also sell shoes from $18 to $122. The more expensive shoes are boots, mostly, that are made from vegan leather. They sell accessories as cheap as $3, and they have a lot of handbags that can go up to $90. Again, with Band Retro, I could not find an ethics or sustainability statement on their actual website. As this Reddit commenter once said, if you can't find that information easily available, you probably should just assume that it isn't really happening. Most of their clothing is made with a mix of cotton and polyester, and most of their shoes and accessories being made from vegan leather is another way to know that they use a lot of polyester and other plastics. For their sizing, Band Retro's website has a sizing chart that ranges from extra small to 4X. I couldn't figure out whether or not all of the clothing is offered in that size range. If certain sizes were sold out on something, it just wasn't listed at all. Since everything that they sell is their own brands, I would assume that everything goes from XS to 4X, so not really sure. Wasn't the easiest to find on the website, but next up is Vivien of Holloway. This is another big name that you might have heard from a lot of other like vintage style people on the internet. It is also a UK-based vintage reproduction brand which has an actual brick and mortar location in London. The company is owned by a real woman named Vivien, and according to the website, she started off making clothes by playing around with her grandmother's sewing machine at the age of 10, and now she is an accomplished designer with 3 companies in the UK that create her clothing. Vivien of Holloway's pricing is on the higher end, comparable to Pinup Girl Clothing. Their dresses are usually about 120 Great British Pounds, but go up to 200 Great British Pounds, which translated to American dollars is about $165 to $275. Their tops range from about $53 to $122 depending on the style. Their bottoms range from $81 to $136, and they also have a wide range of accessories. Their jewelry is often cheaper than $20. They offer quite a few petticoats in different colors at $62 each. They have handbags from around $60 to $70. And they sell stockings at about $17 a pair. For their ethics, according to their website, all Vivien of Holloway products are produced in London. However, aside from that, they don't have an official ethics or sustainability statement on their website. That seems to be the trend with these brands that I'm talking about today. Due to their pricing and the fact that the bulk of their operation takes place in London, I'm going to assume that they have fair labor practices, which might be a little blind of me to say, but as far as I know, all of their clothing is produced in London, so they would have to be in line with the local labor laws there. And it seems like most of their clothing is 100% cotton. They do use polyester in quite a few things, but a lot of their dresses are 100% cotton. They sell leather handbags made from 100% genuine leather, so if you're vegan or just in general avoid buying clothing or products that are made with animal products, that might not be for you. However, on the flip side, that also means that there's no polyester or plastic being used in those handbags, so, you know, kind of as far as the environmental impact there, that just depends on your own morals and ethics. For their sizing, Vivien of Holloway is extremely unique, to me at least, in the fact that they do not use a traditional sizing method. They don't use letters and they don't use numbers. They just use bust, waist, hip measurements. Like on the website, when you select your size, it's just by bust, waist, hip measurements. Like, in a drop-down menu. I think that this is super interesting because that means that you don't have to limit yourself to a certain letter or number, which changes depending on most brands anyway. However, the sizes are based on hourglass measurements, and despite hourglass body types being kind of like the standard or like the beauty expectation in our society, I'm pretty sure there was a study done that says that I think only like 8% of women in the US actually have natural hourglass body types. So there's that. If you're somebody with like, I don't know, a 34-inch waist and a 46-inch bust, for example, you might have some trouble finding which dress would best be suited for you. Generally, I would say that if you're stuck choosing between two sizes, to size up, because it's better to get something bigger on you that you can either cinch in with a belt or just have somebody alter it for you, than trying to squeeze a certain part of yourself into something, because that's just not gonna work. That's my opinion anyway. I always try to buy things that could be a bit bigger on me rather than smaller, but based on the math that I've done, it seems like from the measurements, Vivian of Holloway carries sizes that could be best described as US dress sizes 2 to 18. That's not the most inclusive sizing range, as we know that other companies can and do offer much broader sizing ranges than that. Still, I do think it's extremely interesting that Vivian of Holloway uses bust, waist, hip measurements rather than specific letters or numbers, so yeah. And the last website that I'll be talking about in this video is British Retro. As you might assume, British Retro is yet another British reproduction brand. I believe they were founded only a few years ago, and right off the bat I think something that makes them stand out is the fact that all of their designs are only offered in limited quantities. So it is very rare that you would be able to get the same dress as somebody else. I'll get into this more later when I talk about ethics and sustainability, but basically, in addition to limiting wasteful mass production, it also offers consumers the chance to own something that is truly unique to them, which can be insanely frustrating if you're like me and you just lust over one of their past designs that you know that they're never going to recreate. But nonetheless, all of their designs are beautiful and, again, truly unique. I would consider British Retro's products to be on the higher end of the mid-level price range. So their dresses range from $83 to $100. As of now, I believe they don't sell any tops. Their skirts are all $62 to $68. They currently have 4 different colors of winter coats that are each $275. They also have a few different colors of petticoats that are each $48. They also have quite a few different kinds of accessories, from $6 to $60. The more expensive items tend to be things like handbags and parasols, which is kind of cool, while the cheaper things include earrings and masks. For their ethics, they don't technically have like an ethics and sustainability statement on their site, but they do have an attached blog that is written on a lot by the 2 founders of the company. And I found one of their blog posts which explicitly states, "I loathe fast fashion and the general disposable nature of what we buy. Of course, I make sure my vintage dress habit stays true to manufacturers who share my values and desire for a more sustainable and ethical way of life." Their only factory is based in London, which again allows me to believe that they stay in line with the local labor laws there. They also take pride in sourcing their materials locally as well, and most of the material that they use is printed cotton, as well as some satin. A lot of today's satin is made from polyester and rayon. It doesn't seem like they use a whole lot of satin. If anything, it'll serve as like a lining for some of their cotton dresses, but very rarely like a full dress made out of satin. Their winter coats are made from a blend of polyester, viscose, and wool, so there's a decent blend of synthetic and natural textiles in there. As I discussed earlier, British Retro does only produce a very small quantity of each of their designs so as to create a sort of unique nature for their clothing, and to avoid wasteful mass production, which is probably the best thing that you can do to be truly environmentally sustainable. All of British Retro's clothing is offered in UK dress sizes 8 to 18, which in US dress sizes is 4 to 14. This is not super inclusive at all. As I mentioned in my last video in this series, I am a dress size 14, which means that my dress size is the biggest that they offer, and I do not consider myself to be a very large person. There are a lot of people who wear sizes bigger than me that would not be able to fit into this clothing, which is very unfortunate. Since they're currently such a small operation, I'm hoping that in the future they plan to expand their sizing options, but right now it's just not the most inclusive. So these were all of the brands that I wanted to discuss today. Like I said before, this was just kind of a wrap up from last week. I wanted to include them in my first video of the series, but it was not possible to cram them all into like a decent time frame. I hope you're all enjoying this series and finding it useful in some way. Next week I'll be uploading a different kind of video to like shake things up a little bit and not get too stale staying in this series, but I will be continuing this series in the future. The next video for this series that I plan on doing is about cheaper options for when you're first getting into vintage style, because let's face it, not everybody has $60 to spend on a new dress. So if none of these brands that I've discussed thus far are very affordable for you, don't worry, I've got you. Thanks so much to everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I have a lot more fun coming on this channel and I upload every Wednesday. So much love. Bye. They don't have an official... However, aside from that,